Well, let me do a quick introduction here. Welcome back, everybody, to In Real Life with Nick. We've been gone for most of the summer. A lot happening in our background. We just moved into a new place. And what did we decide to do? We decided to invite one huge guest onto our show, right, as we're relaunching. So to give you some background, we have something special in store for you on this episode. We have Ivan Raiklin, the Deep State Marauder. Ivan is known as the Green Beret, constitutional attorney, and he's former special forces and an intelligence officer. And he's here today to explain his deep state hit list and why September 3rd is a critical date. You've seen him on TV, Fox News. He's provided congressional testimony.
No. I've only done Tucker Carlson. I don't do faux news.
Oh, nice. Okay, thank you for the correction. I thought you're right, Tucker. Was it when Tucker was on Fox?
One of the reasons Tucker was removed off of faux news is because he broadcast on the nighttime program the interview that he did on his daytime program that he fully has control over as part of the agreement when he was over at faux news, which would have been Tucker today.
Yes, you're right. That's what it was. Okay. So you've seen him in several locations. He is definitely legit. He's been fighting for you, and he's fighting for all of us. So with that, Ivan, I plan on just letting you take this over and explain to us what you're doing and why you're doing it.
So let me start with that. And I want to get as many questions that you have answered as possible. So what am I doing and why am I doing it? That's a really good question. And it's pretty basic. So what am I doing? It's called exposing to the maximum and exercising my First Amendment to the maximum to expose the individuals in our government, former and current, that have been involved in the total destruction and decimation of our constitutional order over the last 10 years specifically.
Amen.
And I can name them by name, date, place, and transgression, categorized by treasonous conspiratorial action and activity within each team, section, division, department of the United States government, and in some instances down at the state level. And what do? I basically collate evidence to then explain to the court of public opinion, which will be the future jury pool once we get to the point where our First Amendment is back. And I got to say this, as of 2 days ago, I can say now confidently that our First Amendment is back when you see one piece of content being viewed in some way, shape, or form by over 1 billion people for the first time ever in the history of humanity. And I'm referring to the conversation that Elon Musk just had with President Trump.
Yep.
I would say that 2 days ago, our First Amendment is back. And it's almost as though that was a dry run rehearsal,
a test
for September 3rd. So that the servers are able to withstand the FBI and the size of barrage of DDoS attacks that they tried to do on Elon Musk's servers 2 days ago.
Well, I found that interesting.
40 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
And why am I doing it? Well, my parents fled the Soviet Union from communism. What happened to General Flynn is exactly what the KGB was going to do to my father, meaning he was speaking truth to power when he was in the Soviet Union, was able to then avoid the Gulag and flee to the United States under the Jackson-Vanik Amendment. And when I saw what they did to General Flynn and with the illegal election and with trying to target me, you cross 3 red lines, 3 strikes, you're out. Now you weaponize me against you to the max. And if you want to call my bluff, I plead with you to call my bluff.
Oh my goodness.
And you'll see what that looks like.
You are a tough dude. I've seen some of your interviews, and you are a tough dude. I'm kind of fangirling a little bit right now, to be quite honest. You're doing right now.
You're my oxygen. I guess it's working, because the whole point of what I'm doing with my First Amendment is, hey, I did the research. Now we have to educate people. And if it's resonating, then, we get some sort of response like you're exhibiting right now. If we can scale that, and it's not about like what you call fangirling. It's about, hey, I spent thousands of hours, 10,000 hours living, breathing, smelling, researching, investigating all of this, compiling it with my team. And now it's time to basically say, hey, this is who was behind the entire mess that we experience over the last several years specifically and last decade. And then when I explain it down to the pixel level, people are like, oh, I knew that. I had a gut feeling that was taking place. But then as I explain all the details, everyone's like, oh, I knew it was happening. Now I know why it happened.
You're able to put together the missing pieces for everybody. So with that being,
in that journey, it was the same thing for me. I was like, oh my God, this is so clear. It all makes sense. This is exactly why Mike Pence acts the way he does and all of his rhetoric and decisions. Or this is exactly why Reince Priebus, Paul Ryan. Like, I can go through the Republican side. I can go through the Democrat side and list you all of the treasonous scum at the highest levels. Now, it's not everybody. My short list is only about 600 people.
I was going to say I'd heard 350, so it's grown.
Oh yeah, it grows every day.
I bet.
So, the reason why it grows every day is we continue to dig and research, and then more whistleblowers come out to tell us some more detail.
Yes.
And then new names are added to the list with evidence to back it up. Literally, that phone call that I was getting before you pressed record, you heard it in the background?
Yep.
The ringing? Yeah. More whistleblowers of very high order are like basically saying, hey, I got some info. I need to send you a document. Please take a look.
Please.
And I said, hey, I'm doing a podcast, so I'll get to it later tonight.
Thank you for making us important. This is really awesome.
Yeah, we want to find out more.
Me too,
too. Getting organized and other people that were, I like to say, just kind of the normies, and we're kind of putting ourselves out there. That's why we're trying to like kind of find our voice, putting a podcast together, figuring out how to do it, because it seems like the average American that, goes to work every day, comes home, they have their opinions, they have their, freedoms to vote on something. But outside of that, it seems like it's been very popular to actually shut down that dissenting opinion and that speech. And even like when you were talking about the example with Musk and Trump and how they did the DDoS attacks on them, what I found very interesting with that is the capacity level of that attack was not small. It's not like someone out of their home in a basement that knows some code or knows some nice little trickery on the internet. So to be able to take down something like that, they had to have a level of organized and heavy duty capacity within systems, data centers, or something like that. And it was very eye opening that we're not going to hear this on, like you said, the faux news or, the
Communist News Network.
Yeah, I call them commie or criminal news network, faux news, MSLSD, Washington Compost, New Woke Slimes, Fake Book, Insta Garbage. You're going to share this out to Fake Book and Insta Garbage, CommieTube, and I mean, I don't know if you should be doing that. Unless you want to be. You know what? Actually do that so you can be suspended. And then you're off of there. So I'm going to participate in making sure you're suspended off of all those three platforms. The First Amendment sounds that I make.
That's amazing.
Deal?
That's a deal. You can suspend me anytime. That's fine.
Yes, you got to start somewhere. You got to build somewhere.
With that being said, did all this start back during Russia collusion time?
So you mean the genesis of who's on the deep state target list?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
I think that's when my eyes were opened, honestly.
We can go back decades. I get it. Like people can go back, but for I think the people that are still alive and that are coherent enough to be held to account, to answer your question, I guess shortly, and then I'll extend it a little bit more broadly. It really starts with, for me personally, when I was at the Defense Intelligence Agency, in 2014, when General Flynn was the director. And I was sitting in the Ukraine crisis team at the Pentagon, the National Military Command Center, advising our National Command Authority up the chain on what was going on in Crimea, Donetsk, Lugansk, Eastern Ukraine, right? And the Ukraine crisis that was going on in 2014. I had observed that they resigned General Flynn, and it didn't make any sense in the sense, like, it was clear that it was a political removal. And so it started to pique my interest. And from there, it really continued on to what they did to General Flynn in 2017 by Mike Pence forcing him to resign.
Yes.
Now, a lot of stuff wasn't clear, but as I start to ask the question of this is interesting. Why? And as I further developed my analytic skills through teaching from 2018 to 2022, in the Intel community, analysts, and I mean, that's part of my background. And then in my reserve capacity, working at the same period of time as a reservist in Silicon Valley and the greater Bay Area as a technology scout on behalf of the Army Reserves, it gave me a little bit more network knowledge, experience, subject matter expertise to then scratch the itch that I had of, like, who's behind the weaponization against General Flynn, and then why? And as I started to dig, all roads lead back to what happened at the RNC convention and beyond in 2016 to then be able to answer the weaponization on General Flynn, Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, the Crossfire Hurricane op, one category, the 51 spies who lied, another category, which represents mostly the CIA folks, and then how the different impeachment hoaxes developed, and then the Mueller investigation, right? So all of that, and I didn't do it in chronological, I get it, but all those different categories were representative of an escalatory scheme, conspiratorial cover-up for the previous transgression that they didn't want to come out publicly and be exposed. And then they go to the next cover-up. And then, the Crossfire Hurricane illegal op, covered up by the Mueller investigation, covered up by the impeachment hoax one with the fake whistleblower Eric Ciaramella, covered up by COVID con to remove a second term so that the original 3 cover-ups would not be exposed. But then the illegal election was the 4th cover-up for the previous 3. And then the illegal certification with Piglosi and 30 Pence on January 6th by conducting the Fedsurrection and basically promoting it as an insurrection. And then the next escalatory cover-up, which included Jamie Ratskin's role with impeachment hoax 2 to promote the insurrection narrative and cover up the Fedsurrection of January 6th. And then to continue the cover-up with, after that, what did they do? All the lockdowns continued, right? Yeah. All the forced mutilation, the hype and the fear of you got to take the shots, right?
Where's the accountability?
21, 22. What's that?
Where do you think we're making headway to actually have something represent that they're getting held accountable and the pressure's being put on them where the future is actually going to show us something? Because it seems like there's a lot of getting away with things. Like they push the envelope, they like pushing the vaccine, whether it was military or corporations. It's like Fauci, there's been a few things that are out in the media, whether it be a video on Congress and, certain, senators kind of question him harshly, but it seems like he's still kind of gotten away with it. And it doesn't seem like there's enough accountability in that deep state system. Like the deep state, that swamp has taken hold. And it's like there's signs that things are pushing back, seeing what Musk is doing, seeing what Trump is doing, but not necessarily the name of the person specifically. That free American actually pushing back and then someone gets held to account on it. Like there's some senior level leaders that are running things right now that they get a little bit of pressure. Like the job isn't easy, but if they really do something wrong, it doesn't seem like anyone's getting held to account. It's kind of getting blown off. It's like this soft power. And I kind of threw a lot of
That's
different
why Ivan's
points
the Deep
out.
State Marauder.
Yeah, I'm ready to go into that.
It, but it was
I just
like,
want to make sure you get all your thoughts in.
Up. It was like,
I
when
think
did they actually have the violation?
Right, we need the dominoes to start to fall.
Yeah.
Okay, so I understand the question. Let me kind of reframe it and say, what is the process upon which we can get in some instances, capital punishment for this action?
Yeah.
Would be, I think, the question that's asked. How do we get to a point for maximum consequences, accountability, retribution, and then maybe capital punishment. In some states that still allow it. Well, the first phase in all of this is let me just contextualize this globally. If there are 7 billion people on the planet, let's just say that, agree with me on that.
Sure.
And the 7 billion people receive information in different forms through their interactions with, other humans, right? That they learn and observe through the 5 senses, through the digital content that is sent their way in the form of video, documents, sometimes cable TV, internet, email, text, right? You get it. The whole landscape. If you're a judge, right, then it's going to come from other sources like court documents, this and that. But at the end of the day, in the collective, a majority of humans, especially when you apply it of those 7 billion to those in the 350 million in the United States, and those that are 18 or over that are still lucid, they receive their information more and more from where? I want to kind of do a call and response as we talk through
Sure.
this.
TikTok, social media. I mean, that's where they're getting their news.
Right. So when those that are the ones conducting the criminal actions that need to be held to account are the ones controlling all of the information going into those 18 and above and even earlier in the schools, through your commie talk, through your fake book, Insta garbage, commie search, and commie tube. You are controlling everything that they know, everything that they search for, and everything that they're going to learn.
Yes.
Meaning, you have a method and mechanism to cover up for anything you do not want anyone to know. And those 18 and above that I'm referring to are the American jury pool that will end up being in the court of law if these people end up getting to the court of law for criminal prosecution. So they are already predisposed, one, to never convict, because none of the information that they've been exposed to in their entire life is going to give them any sort of desire or to believe anything in the courtroom that's presented to the contrary. It won't even get to the court because that judge is also susceptible to all of the same content that was manipulated into the jury pool. So then the judge is not going to be favorable. In addition, before it even gets there, the entire information landscape is set so that there's a certain narrative that everybody collectively understands.
Right.
So, phase 1 is you, me, Elon, Truth Social, Rumble, Getter, Gab, Locals, Substack, Telegram, Parler, if that even still exists.
I know.
Where we can actually
Unfortunately,
create content
they're gone.
that is much more compelling than can be obtained in any of the commie platforms to start to off-ramp individuals over to what you said, dissenting opinions that have much more substantive analytic process behind them, as well as evidence in that discussion to start to train, advise, equip, educate, mentor the public, right? So that public then says, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, you're my state rep. Do you know about this piece of content? Hey, state senator, do you know about this piece of content? Hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, sheriff, you're my neighbor. What the hell's going on? This person's here. I found this on Rumble. I found it on X. And at first they're going to be like, no, it's only credible if it comes from the New Woke Slimes or the Washington Compost or Fake Book or Insta Garbage. But as more and more constituents are like, well, no. This gal or guy is producing the raw evidence. This is actual raw video footage, live of what they're referring to. This is geotagged evidence. These are the communications in Twitter holdings. This is, whatever. So that creates the domino you're talking about, the domino effect of one person learns, tells their neighbor 2, they each tell their neighbor 4, 8, 16, and then before you know it, some of my content, now that it's not as censored, it's getting tens of millions of views, right? I couldn't do that during the whole censorship industrial complex,
Right.
because they use that time period to censor to cover up their transgressions. So when we reach a period when 1 billion people on the planet are now like, my TDS is now worn off because I just listened to a long interview between Elon, whom I respect, and Trump, who I hate. And so now I have to come to the conclusion of like, maybe he's not so bad. Let me dig further. And then that TDS wears off. And then you start to look at other sources. Now X is opened up and we are dominating on X now.
Mm-hmm.
And
We are.
At the end of the day, if there's only 350 million people, or if there are 350 million people and each one of them only have 24 hours in a day, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours working, 8 hours of content consumption, it's a zero-sum game in the sense that they can spend 8 hours on Criminal News Network or Facebook, right, or these other platforms. But my Rumble channel, it came from somewhere that I have 40,000 people observing, and I have tens of thousands, sometimes viewers, and on X, etc. And so that creates the momentum.
I think there would be a question on that.
Off-gassing those people so that we start to bankrupt those organizations that lied.
Right.
And bring in folks that are ready, willing, and able to listen to bold voices that can then motivate them to then say, like, the whole purpose here is I want everyone listening in to be a leader and create their own regular content flow, meaning even just their musings of what they're observing and seeing based on their own eyes and their own thoughts. Because the more of us that do that, the more we dominate the information landscape away from those that just manipulated and curated it for us.
Yeah.
And that's how we get control of the jury pool before the jury pool is even going through voir dire, meaning jury selection, so that the entire jury pool is already predisposed with the information needed so that they can go ahead and criminalize folks. So, to summarize, educate the masses through the First Amendment, compete with the lies with truth, win over the people with the truth. They then get angry because of the lies that were fed them and start to go after the institutions that did that lying. What are the institutions? The FBI, the CIA, all the new networks that I just mentioned, right?
Yeah.
And then they ask themselves, who can I leverage to go after them? How about I talk to my neighbor sheriff, my neighbor district attorney, at the county level, my state rep, my state senator, and then give them the courage to conduct the maximum allowable under the law, under their discretionary authority. If they fail to do so, remove and replace them immediately.
And that's what you're working on with your deep state list.
How can we do that immediately, I wonder? Do we have to wait till the next vote?
No, we need to get this
There's several
information out
ways.
now. Yeah.
Number one, you can go, there's the conventional ways, there's the unconventional ways, and there are the very unconventional ways. You want to hit all three?
Sure.
Yes, definitely.
As you go more unconventional, obviously that expedites in which you remove people. So,
that's what we want to see.
What's that?
I said, that's what we want to see.
So the conventional approach is you vote them out using illegitimate electoral infrastructure in many places, right?
Right.
That's the common kind of path. The less conventional way is to go ahead and conduct a recall of that particular elected official, right? Many states and jurisdictions have the ability to recall, meaning recall and remove that elected official before the next election, okay? And there's a process, signatures, etc. But it's still relying somewhat on the electoral system. Not always,
And
but
takes
the
a
electoral
while.
system that's in place.
Yeah.
What?
And it takes a while too.
Yeah, it takes significant effort.
And might have too much damage done before they can get out of there.
The more unconventional path is, why don't you identify the person you want to remove and investigate them until you find something that you can then take to another competent authority that is aligned with you to create some consequences so that it forces a resignation. Okay? Right?
Yep.
A more unconventional path is,
Secret Service
you like
gal?
this so far?
Yeah, I like it. Keep going.
Like we had the Secret Service gal actually finally resign. Took a while.
Yeah, but when both political parties are behind trying to get somebody to resign, to me that is an indicator that I lean toward the hypothesis stating that the leadership of the Uniparty were involved in the attempted assassination of President Trump.
Oh, I agree with
And
you.
they just want to do a patsy, do the quick, hey, cover up, and then never again talk about
hope to sweep it under the
President
rug.
Trump being shot in the head.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
and the
agree with
portrayal of that on the media was just, it continues to be pretty, I guess I'd just say pathetic.
Yeah, so if you despise and think the media is disgusted, then turn them off, bankrupt them, and create your own. That's what we're doing here.
Yep, that's what
Right?
we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
been
agree.
a little bit of an evolution. We started I'd say 2 years ago, definitely. And the information didn't add up. So I wanted to find out more, but then it was obvious sometimes where someone would explain the news being shared, where that MSNBC, that one gets real horrible. And some of the others where you could tell it was their opinion.
Yeah, name one time where they got it right
Right.
on anything consequential.
You know, and it's
I
probably
can't think of a time.
No.
long road to hold them accountable, but all this stuff on whether it was kind of a Russiagate thing or when we had riots and stuff and, you know, the fires are in the background and they're saying mostly peaceful, that kind of thing, not getting some kind of form out to the public, that misrepresentation that someone out there within the position of like doing something about it was like, why is that okay? Because it's kind of gotten into, I think, day-to-day life. Like, I might be tying too many things together, but it seems like my daily life pre-COVID, it was
Pre-forced government lockdowns.
Yes.
Yep. Before that, there was a level of a normie day-to-day interaction where everyone's imperfect. So sometimes you agree, you disagree. Sometimes someone had a good day or bad day. You could kind of let bygones be bygones, or you could have some conviction and actually put your foot down. But then after COVID, it seems like the day-to-day life has gotten messed up. Like I go to the restaurant, people are different. I get service or I'm involved with just
we're all
having
at
a
capacity.
chat.
Would they have,
Capacity.
I mean, every single person that's paying attention to what's going on, we're at capacity. Like we are so stressed out over it's like a historical day with the news every single day. Something's happening. And those of us that are awake are feeling that internally. And like we were telling Ivan, like we just want some accountability at some point. And that's why earlier this summer, I think you, Ivan, really blew up with that one reporter gal that tried to corner you, and you really you did a great job with her. And so when we first saw that start to explode on social media, I had found you.
Let it all out. I want to hear what you felt.
It was freaking amazing. It was amazing. So
as you watch that.
Yeah. It was a great feeling because that's what we all want and need right now is you out there calling whoever it is. All of us need to be out there calling these people, calling their bluff to their face. I just think.
So does that sound like you're going to join me at the DNC convention next week?
My goodness, if I can't even say if, because the reality is if I could make it happen, I would be there for sure. I would love to. How the heck did you end up in that position anyway? How did they let you in, Ivan?
I'm the Deep State Marauder.
You
What
got
do you
me
mean, let
floored.
me in? I'm going in whether they allow me or not.
I love it. That's what we need. I mean, so he won't go into detail because he can't. Hopefully I'll catch you up maybe later, but he has a lot in common with you as far as career-wise, intelligence and all of that. So he's kind of limited and he gets to rambling a little bit. And I'm the one that just wants to be like, this is what he means. You know, the COVID shots really messed up people. And I know that you have, you were dealing with that as well as part of the military and being forced into vaccinations. And that's kind of his story too. And so when I go back to thinking like he was saying, he really started paying attention like 2 years ago. For me, it was, 2016, 2017. And he and I sat down several weekends having a drink, arguing back and forth where he thought I was just insane with some of the things I was coming up and talking to him about. He just thought I was insane. And I was like, I gotta just stop because at some point you're going to realize that your puzzle pieces are falling together because they're falling together for me already. And our daughter's actually producing this behind the scenes. She's sitting over there giggling because I would get done with him and I'd be like, how do you not see this?
Well, the irony too was when you're saying how, it's like, I'm hearing you and you're, this sounds crazy. The thing was, it wasn't you personally that was being crazy. The point you were making, like, this is literally, in fact, by itself, out of control.
It is.
And when you're fed for so many years, because even historically, there's different things that had changed the way I process information. Like for decades, the misdirected information on previous political things that had happened, whether it be a different side of someone talking about details on a Nixon or a different side of Reagan
or just
that I
anything in our
never heard
history.
about until the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But the Fed, I feel like it was an indoctrination.
Oh, it definitely was. We've all been indoctrinated.
Yeah, it was a common name to change the narrative.
Can you give me a general sense of what organization you worked in, if you can, or if not, then I get it.
Almost all of them.
Okay, so then if that's the case, I'm going to lay things out and you're going to be able to understand. So, in 2016, I don't know how much content you've consumed of mine, but let me just kind of reiterate this, and this is important. In 2016, the biggest existential threat to both of the political party leadership was General Flynn because he was the closest advisor that knew the system to candidate Trump and was already indicating that he was going to conduct a full audit of the black budget to include every single presidential finding that had ever been signed. Okay? That should indicate something to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, for those that don't know what that means, is a presidential finding is when a president signs off on a specific document to authorize, almost always, the CIA to conduct covert action. That could run the gamut of anything, as long as the president somehow articulates it has a nexus to national security. So then the president and the CIA director are primarily the two that are going to be knowledgeable of the actual intent of that finding. Okay?
Okay.
So, when the war machine allows the military-industrial complex to make money hand over fist in the districts wherein these Congress members reside, just like in today's day and age, it would be the House Armed Services Committee chairman, Mike Rogers down in Alabama, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then in previous times. Or you name the defense contractor involved in that, right? They're making money hand over fist. So if you got somebody that knows the system well enough to be able to scratch that itch and look into it, see who's involved, see how the money flowed. I'm not talking about the MIP funds or the NIP funds. I'm talking about the straight up black budget, not involved in any of the publicly facing documents. And then when it starts to implicate former presidents and former directors of the CIA, particularly those that signed off on remember the 51 that said the Biden criminal syndicate laptop had all the earmarks of a Russian information operation?
Yes.
Right.
They are squirming for their survival because the existential threat that is about to expose them was General Flynn. So what did they do? They locked arms to box him out of the system, leveraging all of their discretionary and non-discretionary outside of their own authority power.
When then Obama had
Immediate allies. He then ended up being the auto search of the worst person ever in the history of humanity, the biggest traitor ever known. That any mammal ever in existence, no one can match the treasonous activity of Flynn. Was the autofill, right?
Yep.
On Google, on Commie Search.
Well, and that was the ugly hoax that kind of. Well,
and that's what opened things up.
Right.
And then they had to cover that up with the next cover up because they didn't think that there was going to be a fight back against that. And then it kept escalating. When before I kind of you guys jumped in to kind of start the conversation about something else. After the illegal certification on 2021, what happens later? The next major thing is where the Fedsurrection cover-up continues, where both political parties are protecting themselves by prosecuting all the people that could be witness to the Fedsurrection, meaning those that were exercising their First Amendment unarmed, peacefully, both outside and in some instances inside the Capitol. Okay, you can get them for trespass, but that's it, right? And so what do? They keep these same individuals over at FBI primarily, in this instance, that were involved in the Crossfire Hurricane op, that then later developed the Mueller investigation op, that then later created the impetus for the impeachment hoax one. Because you got to remember the names.
Yeah.
Eric Ciaramella was the whistleblower that worked with the traitor twin brothers Vindman, Alexander and Yevgeny, in order to create the impeachment hoax. Well, when you dig down on Eric Ciaramella, he was a CIA detailee over to the National Security Council. And when you look at his background, yes, he was one of the attorneys he was a former CIA guy, and the attorney that represented him in all of this was Andrew Bacaj, an attorney for Johnny Boy Brennan, one of the 51 spies who lied. And Johnny Boy Brennan's Inspector General, David Buckley, was one of the 51 spies that the uniparty, these interests, used to represent Nancy Pelosi's beloved Benny Thompson and Mike Pence's beloved Liz Cheney's January 6th Fedsurrection Cover-Up Committee. Again, the staff director for Benny Thompson's January 6th Cover-Up Committee in the last Congress was the staff director for that committee who ran, and basically he was the one that created the Patriot target list on who to action, to the tune of, at this point, it's at almost 1,500 through his work. And he was the Inspector General for Johnny Boy Brennan and was one of the 51 spies who lied. And what did they do in 2023? Well, they found out that President Trump had declassified in his last hours of the first term certain documents that they needed to seize and capture. What were those documents? It was everything related to the Crossfire Hurricane op, so that Trump could use in his lawsuit against the FBI via RICO of them illegally going after him and spying on him. And General Flynn was going to use that in a civil lawsuit against the very same individuals at the FBI and the DOJ previously. So it's a criminal cartel.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, wait, you declassified the evidence that's going to criminalize us. Wait, we've been covering this up for the last 6 cover-ups. We need to do the 7th cover-up. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to raid Mar-a-Lago and seize that evidence so you can no longer use that in your criminal trial against us. And General Flynn won't be able to use that to expose us as well. And meanwhile, while all that's going on, we're going to run the censorship industrial complex through another institution that was created in 2017 and 2018 by Christopher Wray, the FBI director, teed up by Chris Christie and Mike Pence. How so? Chris Christie's attorney during Bridgegate was Christopher Wray. Oh, coincidental, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they ran circles around President Trump, and the reason why they ran circles around him because they removed the one person that would bring in a network of people to expose all of them. And now I'm talking about General Flynn. And the cover-ups continue because they continue to wrap a nice,
with Flynn.
tight circle around President Trump so he can't make he can't learn anything or make any decision to hold these people to account. And so having observed that and realizing that's the problem that we face because we have the Paul Ryans through Kevin McCarthy and his role in basically propping up Chris LaSavita, the campaign manager,
Yes.
Susie Wiles, which I think tomorrow Trump's going to finally make an announcement firing them.
I was
which
reading
is
that
gonna be
today
good.
too. I hope so. That's way past.
Yeah, so I would say that I'm one of the figures there that are calling this out because at the end of the day, it's so clear as day. Kevin McCarthy, Paul Ryan in the background. This is how it works. It's political leverage. Paul Ryan gets to decide if you're a Republican and if you're not playing ball with Paul Ryan, you don't get to go on faux news and you don't get your message out and you don't fundraise for your campaign. How? One, you don't get your message out. And two, Kevin McCarthy, who still is the biggest fundraiser for House through his Congressional Leadership Fund, PAC, gets to decide where it allocates money. So Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy are the ones that decide who basically gets voted for their reelection. And he's real close with Chris LaSavita. So if Chris LaSavita is told, hey, you need to make sure that I become, meaning Kevin McCarthy, chief of staff for Trump, and if he doesn't take Kevin McCarthy as chief of staff for Trump, then the money that he has to control and influence elections for the House, they're not going to be spent on Republicans. They will be spent to support Democrats so that the Democrats win the House in January of 2020, come in on January 3rd of 2025. And even if Trump does win electoral college vote, that the House is just going to label Trump under Jamie Raskin's resolution an insurrectionist. And then Trump can't even take office January 20th. But I think my First Amendment sounds had an impact.
Yes.
And was then sent within the vicinity of the Trump campaign to the highest levels for him to finally realize, oh, wait, there might be something here.
Yeah,
We'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah, I hope so.
Each day I'm waiting to find out something more.
Oh, yeah, I went on a couple tangents.
No, you're good. No,
good.
I also want to give you the floor though, because you've hinted around to it, but I don't know that we've allowed you to really kind of deep dive a little bit on the mother of all Twitter files, on the Elon Musk, on Joseph Pienka. This is his month. You're really calling him out. Like, I want to give you the floor to be able to do that as well.
Yeah, so I got about 14 minutes, but
Perfect.
let me address it in like 2.
Okay.
Maybe 3 or 4. So, the whole concept that mother of all Twitter files relates to is, okay, I'm a lawyer, Green Beret, intel officer. I know the codes based on what I just discussed.
Yep.
I know the people involved, the culture and climate and both, who the influencers are, etc. And I'm thinking to myself, under the current captured illegal belligerent executive branch, how do we push for the maximum legal, moral, and ethical expedited movement towards the accountability that we discussed? Meaning the education of the court of public opinion to raise the political courage through the demand of the people onto our elected officials at the county and state level to then basically say, hey, you're going to do this, okay? And if not, guess what? We're going to do to you a little bit more strongly than what we did to Lizzie Cheney and Adam Kinzinger.
Yeah.
And so how do we build that? Well, Elon's playing ball. Before he was playing ball, now he's basically in the starting lineup. Okay? Before he was backbenching, and now he's literally the quarterback. So if you're the quarterback or if you're the coach, the offensive coach, whatever sport you want to talk about, Elon Musk has now, because he has gone all in to support President Trump, the only way that he survives as a businessman and literally physically as a human being is that he has to release every single piece of criminal evidence that he holds within his Twitter holdings. Because if he doesn't, he's toast. It's literally, if he wants to commit suicide, then he doesn't release everything he owns on Twitter. If he wants to avoid suicide, then he's obligated to release the criminal evidence. Now that he's moved headquarters from California to Texas, he is now in a safe haven, a sanctuary, because ideologically, Ken Paxton is the most aligned America First Attorney General in the country, hands down.
Yeah.
Like, not even close. If you want to argue that with me, by all means, I'll pause and go one by one. Let me just give you a couple examples. Who just tried to impeach Ken Paxton? The Bush-Cheney syndicate in Texas. He slayed them. Okay, who was the attorney general in the country that filed the most prominent lawsuit in the 2020 election to expose it? Texas versus Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. It was Ken Paxton. Who was the one that was about to drop a lawsuit with Mike Lindell and his attorney Kurt Olson going to the Supreme Court once again exposing the illegal 2020 election? It was Ken Paxton, but Ronna Romney basically leveraged her entire network, meaning Mitt Romney and others, to try to go after him. Another name that I'd like to mention, wasn't it Chris LaCivita, I'm hearing through the grapevine, that was supporting Mr. P. Bush? What's his name? Bush. He was one of the younger Bushes. What was his name?
I don't know the first name. Do you know it?
No. Junior Bush for AG. And LaCivita, I heard, advocated, I don't know if it's true or not, but some indications, I saw reports of it, that LaCivita wanted him jailed for January 6th and stuff. Well, guess what? That's the guy that we need as a fighter. And now that Elon Musk, the most influential American, is in Texas with Twitter with his trove of criminal evidence, because imagine the DMs that were used to discuss these things of former employees of Kamala Harris that were former Twitter executives. For example, the general counsel at FBI during Crossfire Hurricane, the legal spying op, then in 2018 goes over to be the number 2 lawyer at Twitter.
That's Mr. Baker, right?
The entire censorship industrial complex, folks, boys and girls, this is the guy, Jim Baker, that is the key to the kingdom. So if Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi already told him this during our 5-hour meeting a few weeks ago, the number one guy that you need to scrutinize maximally on all his communications to open up the Pandora's box of all the criminal conspiracies, going back to Crossfire Hurricane up to the censorship industrial complex, is Jim Baker. Why? Well, look in there.
Yeah.
You're going to see he talked to everybody. DMs, emails, internal Slack channels. Didn't Twitter issue him a cell phone, a tablet, a laptop, a computer? Let's look through everything. And when you see that and geotag it, you're going to start to be able to allocate by jurisdiction where the crime occurred. And then AG Paxton can be the conduit for divvying it out by state and by county. Remember, there are 2,500 red counties. There's couple dozen red states with red attorneys general. And all he has to do is like, hey, here's the criminal evidence that I subpoenaed Elon that he didn't release with the mother of all Twitter files. And here is the precedent that I recommend you do. Do what Fulton Fanny did, or Fat Al Bragg as a DA, or if you're an AG, just basically continue the precedent set by Peekaboo James, the AG in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it took you actually laying it out a couple weeks ago for me to actually understand where Baker sat and all this. I'm a normie. He calls me a normie. I'm a normie. I wasn't putting that all together until I actually heard one of your podcasts, and I was like, holy smokes.
Does that make sense how he's the key?
Yes.
So from 2014 to 2018, he was the senior lawyer at the FBI that authorized the illegal spying.
Yeah.
All of it.
And then went to
And then
Twitter.
formed a cover-up. And then he went to Twitter to do the censorship industrial complex. The same year that the Democrats took over the House, Nancy Pelosi, the San Francisco representative, is the Speaker of the House to provide political top cover for this operation. And Jim Baker's the one running it from headquarters Twitter. And guess who? Wait, isn't it Joseph Pienka Awareness Month you said as well?
It is. It is.
By the way, his office number is 415-553-7400. And he's working out of the 13th floor.
Nice.
What's that?
I think I've seen you post that a few times.
Yeah, so 415-553-7400, 13th floor of the 450 Golden Gate Avenue, San Francisco, California. That's the headquarters of the FBI in the federal building there. Or not headquarters, but the FBI field office, which is 4 blocks north of Twitter headquarters.
Oh, that's
or
convenient.
formerly, right? And if you're on like one of the top floors of Twitter and you look up 4 blocks line of sight into the skyline at about a 30-degree angle, you can see the 13th floor of the FBI office in San Francisco. Isn't that so coincidental, isn't it? Yes. I've posted like the video, the 3 Apple Maps is great.
Yeah.
To do your little recon.
Yeah.
As we did a little leaders recon, right? Like we did in the military. Anyhow, so Joe Pienka, all my research shows that he was trying to do the right thing, at least on paper and in his testimony under oath when he was on the Crossfire Hurricane team. But when he went to San Francisco, I'm not so sure he continued that, because as the number 3 guy, so you got the special agent in charge, you have the ASAC, assistant special agent in charge, and then you have the head of counterintelligence, which is technically, depending on how they set up the office, the number 3 guy in the office. Well, one of the guys underneath that is a guy by the name of Elvis Chan, who was testifying in the Missouri v. Biden First Amendment lawsuit that exposes some folks like, the Foreign Influence Task Force Section Chief Laura Demlow, and then her supervisory intel analyst, Brian Otten. Oh, wait, Brian Otten, wasn't he the Crossfire Hurricane supervisory intel analyst? So he went from defrauding the FISA court along with his buddy lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith that doctored an email that they used, and the analysis from it was doctored in order to shape the Woods file used to then tell the FISA court, hey, yeah, Carter Page is not reporting back to the CIA based on that doctored evidence, and so now you need to authorize the FISA warrant that is illegally predicated so we can start illegally spying on the Trump campaign. Yes, that Brian Otten that was involved in Crossfire Hurricane is elevated to this new section known as the Russia Perpetuation Influence Task Force, created by FBI Director Christopher Ray Epps. And so Brian Otten then coordinates from headquarters with Elvis Chan in San Francisco and Jim Baker out in Twitter to run the censorship industrial complex regime, as Jim Baker contracts out Twitter 1.0 fact checking to Reuters. You know Thomson Reuters? And guess who was the section leader of the fact-checking team of Reuters? Can't recall her name. I got to look it up and memorize it. But she spent 30-plus years at the CIA. And the station chief during some of this period of time during the illegal spying operation, as they went after George Papadopoulos, one of the 4 targets of the Crossfire Hurricane counterintelligence op, the station chief in London was Gina Haspel. So you're telling me that 30 years in the CIA, Gina Haspel never interacted with the Reuters fact-checking leader that also spent 30 years at the same time that Gina Haspel spent 30 years at the CIA? Now, I get it. If you're a man in the CIA, the chances of interacting, maybe not so great. But after 30 years, there's probably some crosstalk, especially as you raise in the ranks.
Yeah.
But if you're a woman at the CIA for 30 years, there's probably much less of you, especially in the first decade or 2 of your career. So my assumption would be they probably interacted with each other. Let's find out to what extent. Meaning, Jim Baker, Reuters, London, Why don't we take a look at all those interactions and whether they occurred on your DMs? Oh, wait, doesn't John Brennan have a Twitter account? Yes, he does. Doesn't Jim Comey have a Twitter account? Yes, he does. So my entire Deep State target list and all their Twitter accounts, you look at all of them and the communications that were had in the collective by geotagged location, that results in the mother of all Twitter files. And then I asked the question, when would be the ideal date to release all of it, to help inform the debate that happens on September 4th, if they happen to have that, and before early voting starts on September 5th in some jurisdictions.
Yeah.
At a time when we know who the Democrat nominees are, and with sufficient time to tailor the mother of all Twitter files for maximum political upside to President Trump, now that Elon has endorsed him. And for maximum upside from a business perspective, so you get as many people as possible observing and consuming that mother of all Twitter files. I picked the date September 3rd, the day after Labor Day.
Pretty good day.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Can you pick a better day?
No, that's a good day.
So that's the rationale that I used, my analytic mind, to present, hey, Elon, hey, Ken Paxton. September 3rd, fellas. But even if you guys don't do anything, I already have enough to start to increase the heat on September 3rd.
That's amazing.
Based on the whistleblowers that have come out. And to close it out, the mother of all whistleblowers would be Joseph Pientka, since he knows everything happened on both sides. We will give him grace if he steps forward. If he does not, we will continue to investigate him until his legal risk is maximally equal to everybody that is a principal on my deep state target list. So he's got until September 3rd.
We need a whole army.
And I gotta
of
go.
you. Yes, that's good. We need a whole army of you. Thank you,
Ivan.
Ivan.
Like hour.
Go ahead and I'll close it off. Thanks so much, Ivan. Appreciate you. All right, guys, that was an amazing interview with Ivan. And he even provided me with new information that I didn't even know about. So I've got to take some time to digest that. But what I want to do for a call of action to all of you all right now is to go out and do your own research. Quit watching all of the mainstream media. Quit letting them form your opinions, and your beliefs. Go out, do your own research. Yeah. I encourage you to get off of Google. We like to use DuckDuckGo. Danny, you might have a couple other.
Brave search.
Brave
browser has its own search in it. Been using that.
Yeah. And you're going to find how.
Iridium.
Just go out there and start searching on Google, and then go over to Brave, and then go over to, DuckDuckGo and see the difference of information that pops up.
Well, and to contrast, you can look at stuff that is outside of. They're pretty big, but it's outside of the mainstream. It's Turning Point USA's, post millennium, getting the information they have there. And then there's also SCNR.com, which is Scanner News. And that's a news journalism reporting that, Tim Cass has put together.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you look at Yahoo News or MSN or some CNN, you see the blatant contrast. And the thing that someone posted that I like to say now, it's like, it's not getting worse. It's just become so much more obvious.
It is.
Because so many fakes came out. Like all the AI generated big crowds on Kamala or something.
Yes.
And some people still think it's true and some don't. And even after all this time, some of them still believe the lie about there's, it was good people on both sides, or, called.
Or him speaking poorly, Trump speaking poorly against the veterans.
Yeah, editing, distorting, taking the candor way someone speaks with, their different choices of words and conviction, and how that they imply this narrative on stuff that it was like, oh, they're the most horrible person.
No.
And then get away with it all the time too. Going out there, and it was like,
we live in a world that
their faces. What was that? Maxine Waters or something?
Yes.
It was like,
she had,
and
I
that
believe
was
it
totally okay.
I think it was Sarah Huckabee Sanders that she had thrown out of a Washington restaurant. a DC restaurant. So yeah,
You don't
When
have
you-
Whoopi going out there like, hey, you don't,
She does
treat
enough damage
anybody
on
like
TV.
that, even if we might differ politically or something. It was like, no, it's totally okay to be a double
Yeah.
standard on their side.
it is. But
And that needs
that's
to
my
stop.
call to action to all of you is even if maybe Ivan didn't change your mind, which I can't imagine how he couldn't because he is so knowledgeable. And everything that he's saying to you is, like he said, he has all the proof. It's all out there. You just have to do your own research till you feel good on what it is he's saying because it's there. It's right in front of you. It's whether or not you want to spend the time to actually do it for yourself and quit letting these mainstream media folks tell you how to think and what to believe because we have a country to save. And if we don't start taking things more seriously, we aren't going to have much of a country left for our children and our grandchildren. So it's on us. It's time for everybody before they go vote. Don't go vote based off of gender, or race or age or any of that. Actually do your research and vote for who you think is going to take our country in the right direction. Cause, in my opinion, we are not heading in the right direction right now. So, anything?
There's a big false effort to be fake. People can be so nice and so compassionate and follow kind of a double standard of accusing people of the thing that they're actually doing. And that's gotten way too popular now.
Mhm.
And it needs to change where people can try to find common ground with each other. It's okay for, someone to not be the one that's popular trend and bandwagon or, let's just follow everything that CNN says or let's just follow everything that Fox says. And it was like, no, let's be skeptical about both of them and find out what is the merit, what is the character that might actually be the truth. And then we can come to a conclusion and be able to actually get along and work it the heck out.
Yeah.
But this thing where you got to be on one side or the other, that's where it's just a whole malleable mess. You can't even make anything out.
Yeah. Well, challenge accepted, Ivan. As soon as we go uploading all this stuff onto our platforms, let's see how many suspend me before I even get a real start to get going here. So that was
we got to put ourselves to work.
Kind of his challenge in the beginning of the podcast was, you're going to put me on Facebook and Insta garbage and all of those places. You're going to get suspended. So that's okay. It's why I'm doing what I want to do, why my family supported me in doing it as well. It's time for me to use my voice, my platform, and do what I know where I have some strength, to make a difference. So that's my call to action to you guys. Go out, do your research, figure it out what it is you could do to make a difference because all of us have an impact. And with that, I want to say, be good to each other. Thank you for joining us. And this is my husband, Danny. I never got to do my introduction podcast with my husband. So he's very handsome and very smart. And you guys got to experience that on our first podcast together with Ivan. So thank you for joining. I appreciate you guys all so much. And
one time only.
No, there'll be more. Thanks for supporting, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye.